I mentioned Nehemiah a little while ago, and Nehemiah is our scripture lesson. It comes from Nehemiah this morning. In your pew Bibles, it's in the Old Testament on pages 424 and 425. I will be reading from the Revised Standard. What is this Bible? Somebody help me.
The NRSV.
NRSV. I don't have one of those at home, and that's why. But this is what this is. Now, when it was reported to Sanballat and Tobiah and to Geshem the Arab and to the rest of our enemies that I had built the wall and that there was no gap left in it, though up to that time I had not set up the doors of the gate, Sanballat and Geshem sent to me, saying, "Come, and let us meet together in one of the villages in the plain of Ono." But they intended to do me harm. So I sent messengers to them, saying, "I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it to come down to you?" They sent to me 4 times in this way, and I answered them in the same manner. In the same way, Sanballat, for the 5th time, sent his servant to me with an open letter in his hand. In it was written, "It is reported among the nations," and Geshem also says it, "that you and the Jews intend to rebel. That is why you are building a wall. And according to this report, you wish to become their king. You have also set up prophets to proclaim in Jerusalem concerning you, 'There is a king in Judah.' And now it will be reported to the king according to these words. So come, therefore, and let us confer together." Then I sent to him, saying, "No such things as you say have been done. You are inventing them out of your own mind." For they all wanted to frighten us, thinking, "Their hands will drop from the work, and it will not be done." But now, O God, strengthen my hands. One day, when I went into the house of Shemaiah, son of Delaiah, son of Mehetabeel, who was confined to his house, he said to me, "Let us meet together in the house of God within the temple, and let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. Indeed, tonight they are coming to kill you." But I said, "Should a man like me run away? Would a man like me go into the temple to save his life? I will not go in." Then I perceived and saw that God had not sent him at all, but he had pronounced the prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. He was hired for this purpose, to intimidate me and make me sin by acting in this way, and so they could give me a bad name in order to taunt me. Remember Tobiah and Sanballat, O my God, according to these things that they did, and also the prophetess Noadiah, and the rest of the prophets who wanted to make me afraid. So the wall was finished on the 25th day of the month Elul, in 52 days. And when all our enemies heard of it, all the nations around us were afraid and fell greatly in their own esteem. For they perceived that this work had been accomplished with the help of God.
I'd like to thank you all for having me here today. If you haven't heard by now, Alan and I are doing a pulpit swap today. So Alan is at St. Paul Christian Church, and certainly they are asking him today, "Is it true that your wife really can't bake?" Because they have heard every other sermon or so some horrible story of the next time I try to bake something. I know some of you have seen my terrible Christmas cookies or something. So Because whenever there's a break from school, I get itchy and I get twitchy. And the thing that I want to do, the thing that I post on this internet, Facebook place, is I see some wallpaper that I can peel. Should I? And about half of the people root me on, and about half of the people tell me that I'm in over my head already and maybe I should take up knitting or crocheting. See, like this post here, I was minding my own business. I was not even talking about wallpaper. And my friend instigated out of the blue. Sounds like it's time to paint the kitchen or remove more wallpaper. Now, I don't want you to think that I'm anti-wallpaper. Wallpaper is a great thing. I'm sure that it ranks in the top 1,000 human inventions. But I don't like some of the wallpaper that came with my house. And I know that I'm pretty good at peeling the wallpaper, patching the walls, and painting. And I like paint. And I feel like I'm doing a good deed for future generations by painting. Making the walls fresh and clean. So when I graduated, when I got done with school, I had this list of projects that I was going to do, and pulling wallpaper in a couple of rooms was on the top of the list. And then my plans were foiled. Alan popped my bubble. He told me that I had student loans that I had to pay off, and I couldn't do any home improvements. But I love home improvements. It's improving your home. What could be nicer than that? So being told that I could not improve my homes made me sad. All of a sudden, all of the wallpaper looked much more peelable. But I was good. I behaved. And even though there is this one little curly piece of wallpaper behind the kitchen door, I did not pull it, not even once. So then Alan told me that he was going to take a week of church off at the end of January, and that we'd be able to work on some house projects. Well, I'd already been told no wallpaper peeling under any circumstances. So I made a very practical offer. Do you think that we could draft-proof that closet in the bathroom where the gust comes in when the winter wind blows when you're in the bathroom? Because that's a place that you don't want to be when the wind is blowing. Plus, they were full of insulation and dust, and only God really knows what was in those closets. Sure, Alan said. And then he said something shocking. While we're at it, could we rip down that horrible fake tiled wall paneling in the bathroom too? Well, I tried hard to control myself. Our bathroom could be lovely, but somebody got the bright idea to cover it in this paneling that looks like tiles from about 40 feet away, but from up close it just looks like paneling. And I thought that I could live with it, and my Dutch and Scots-Irish background told me that I should live with it because it was perfectly serviceable and it was glossy and so it was easy to wipe off. It wasn't worn out, it was just ugly. And it was different than peeling wallpaper because you could always tap on the wallpaper and know that there was a wall behind that wallpaper. Only God and the previous owner of the house who put up the paneling knew what disaster lay in wait for us behind that paneling. But Alan opened that door, and this might be my only chance to get rid of that paneling. And I was not going to pass that by. This was a gift. And so I said, well, honey, that sounds fine. But you know, if we pull down that paneling, we're stuck dealing with whatever's beneath. The plaster could be shot. what I look like whenever I do home improvement, by the way. It only took us a day to get the attic closet sealed up, and it's finally warm in the bathroom. The closet is great. It's even got a linoleum floor. There's no dust. It's wonderful. Then we stood in the bathroom and stared at the paneling, wondering what mysteries lie behind it. And I couldn't take it anymore, so I picked up my hammer and started pulling down the paneling. Except for the plaster over the closet where there had been a fire in the 40s, which I had to pull down and replace, plaster was decent besides the holes every 8 inches where someone had put up the paneling with a nail gun. By Thursday night, we started on Monday. By Thursday night, we had gotten all of the tiling and patching done, and I was relieved. And Alan said, "You know it was bad when a patched wall looks better than what was there before." And I was not happy then until after we had sanded and cleaned up after sanding and primed. Because there is something magical about a primed wall. But Friday night, we decided to hang textured wallpaper to paint. Now we're dealing with extra corners and the walls follow the roof line in a 45-degree angle, and it's an old house, so nothing's exactly square. And I was going to have a quiet Saturday morning. Everybody was gone. I was going to finish my sermon, do some housework, and then I was going to go do the rest of the wallpaper hanging by myself. And everything was fine until I came into the bathroom at 11 o'clock on Saturday to discover that one of the pieces of wallpaper had fallen down, one of the ones on a 45-degree angle following the roof line. And I just stood there in shock and looked at it until I started talking to it. Seriously, how could you fall down? I just put you up there, you got tons of paste on you, you're brand new, the wall is primed. How could you fall down? Seriously. And I suppose that I should mention that underneath the wallpaper, underneath the paneling, when we pulled it down, there were these little pieces of wallpaper that someone else had not bothered to scratch off when they had done whatever they had done. And thankfully, they had taken out most of the wallpaper, but there were still these little stubborn pieces. And we tried to get those little stubborn pieces off, but finally I said, we're just going to sand it and prime over it and it'll be fine. And this was in another place in the bathroom, and they were not the problem. And I said, as I thought about those tenacious pieces of 30, 40-year-old wallpaper, I said to this piece of wallpaper that had fallen down, I said, how could that old wallpaper stay stuck for decades, and I can't get you to stick for 12 hours? What is our problem? We need to work this out. And at that point, I realized that I needed to take a break because people should not talk to wallpaper under any circumstances. And so I walked out of the bathroom, and I resolved not to go back into the bathroom until my sermon was done. Thankfully, we do have another bathroom, so that was covered. But the wind was taken out of my sails. Some people have a hard time starting a job. Some people will never, ever, ever have pulled off that first piece of paneling. Other people would get to that point where they prime the walls and think, you know, this looks all right. And I got, you know, the house has gotten dirty and I got a lot of other stuff. I'm just going to let this go for a while. Or they might get 90% done with a job and then not put on the outlet covers for a few years. That's happened to somebody here. And it's not like we planned it that way. It just happens. It just happens because we walk into the bathroom on a windy Saturday morning and we think, maybe I am not capable of putting up wallpaper. Maybe I set my sights too high and I should just give up. What do you think is easier? Starting a job or finishing a job? Certainly, there are challenges to getting started. You got to get your supplies together, you got to make a budget, you got to have the time and the muscle power to do the work. You got to get up the gumption to take the first hammer swing. But it is probably harder to get the job done once you've started it. I know that even the projects that I've done, I meant to go back and do little touch-ups or finish this one little thing. Even if they're things that nobody will ever see, I know that there's this one little point where there's no pain, and I just need to take a Q-tip and touch that one little spot up. And most churches have the same problem. Now, I'm not talking about the plaster and the wood and the carpet of the church. I'm talking about the mission and the vision. We hear God's call to change our church, to affect the community around us, to change the way that we look as a church to the people in the community, to change the way that we are a church. And I can't put my finger on the moment when it started in this church. That's your job. But it's very clear for me that this church knows that there is a call and has accepted that call. I can see that you're on a mission to adapt and change and improve. And I hardly recognize parts of this church from the time that I came until now. There have been walls that have come down. The paneling has been painted downstairs. We've got this wonderful welcome center. Outside, things have changed. It's a beautiful change, transformation. And I've only been a member here for 3.5 years. I chose today's scripture reading because I thought that it was fitting to the renovation and rebuilding that I see here. God called Nehemiah to do something nearly impossible, to rebuild the wall of Jerusalem. This wall had been destroyed a century ago, and many of the people of Jerusalem had been taken captive. The wall was just a pile of rubble. The problem, besides that the wall was a pile of rubble, Nehemiah was not a mason. Nehemiah was not a general contractor. Nehemiah had been the cupbearer to the king of Persia. And what does a cupbearer know about rebuilding a wall? We have to imagine that some guy in that city knew more about building a wall than Nehemiah could possibly have known. Somebody must have at least tiled their bathroom, if they had had bathrooms. But God chose Nehemiah. And even though the work made Nehemiah tired, and even though people teased him, and even though people threatened him, Nehemiah always reminded everybody to focus on God. What is it that causes us not to finish projects? I think that we can narrow it down to obstacles, discouragement, and distractions. And it seems that God took care of the obstacles for Nehemiah. And it seems that Nehemiah kept up everybody's morale. But Nehemiah has a couple of distractions. First, he has this persistent messenger trying to get him to stop the work and come down and talk with him. And these are not small threats. These are threats that if you don't stop, there's going to be an invasion. And after Nehemiah doesn't show up 4 times, this messenger comes again and says, if you don't come, we're going to go tell the king that you are plotting a revolt and that you are trying to get everyone to go against him. And then after that whole drama is put to bed, he is told by a respected man of God that the solution to all of this war and drama is for him to go and hide in the temple. And all of these things would keep him from doing his project. But through all of these distractions, Nehemiah's response is the same. I am carrying on a great project, and I cannot go down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and go on down to you? Should a man like me run away? Should one like me go into the temple to save his life? I will not go. And Nehemiah could have wasted all sorts of time going down and talking with those people and making sure that their feelings were comforted and trying to convince them that he wasn't really trying to revolt and just hiding out to save his own skin. But he refused to be distracted. He just said no, and he kept on working. And because Nehemiah refused to be derailed by distractions and he relied upon the power of God, he finished the wall in 52 days. This is actually just the rubble, the ancient rubble of what they believed to be Nehemiah's wall. This is just the foundation of the wall. And can you imagine how big it must have been? And the other result was that all of the people in the surrounding areas they realized that the work must have been done with God. And that is an awe-inspiring thing to know, that you couldn't do this by yourself, that God helped you, and that other people realized that. And when we as a church try to get moving and change the status quo, we can be sure that we meet with similar distractions, both from outside the church and from inside of the church. But our job is to love God. Our job is to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. And if what we're doing isn't contributing to that growth in love, then maybe we are part of that distraction. Nehemiah realized that he could not do this work on his own. There was no way that Nehemiah, one man, could have built that wall by himself. He went to the Lord in prayer, and he said, "Strengthen my hands." We need our hands strengthened too. If you look at my hands today, there's primer and caulk stuck in my cuticles, my fingernails. I am in desperate need of a manicure. I've got some cuts and calluses, and after 3 weeks of smashing, stapling, scraping, plastering, sanding, tiling, cleaning, wallpapering, painting, and caulking, my hands are sore. And we still have work to go. And after the first week, Alan went back to work. And sometimes the people who are leaving us, who are helping us, leave after a time. And we need to say to God and to the people around us, "Strengthen my hands." Sometimes we get tired, discouraged. And we need to say, "Strengthen my hands." And as a church, we've got to make the same realization. These ideas that we've had, these amazing ideas how to build the church up, improve the church, bring people in here, the truth is we are powerless to do them without two things: every ounce of gumption and power that is within us, and the power of God through each other. I challenge you to strengthen each other's hands. Whether that means going to youth group or Young at Heart or Sunday school, I challenge you to really get involved. I'd like to encourage you to invite your friends and your family to church, to Sunday school, to special events. And when I stood up in my own pulpit, I told my church something that probably every church should hear. I'd like to encourage you to come to board meetings to discuss the issues before a decision is made. And I'd like to extend to you that same strengthening encouragement to invite you to have your own voice be heard at the right time and in the right forum. And I'd like to remind you that Central Christian does not have one Nehemiah. And it should not have one Nehemiah, or two, or three. Most importantly, I'd like to challenge you to take on a project. I'd like to challenge you to hear that call. And I'm not suggesting that you need to build a wall or pick up a hammer. Maybe your project is to speak out when you see someone being wronged or someone who is suffering. Maybe your project is to hear your neighbor speak out and then join in, strengthen their hands, do something about it. Maybe your project is to strengthen someone else's hands. I invite you to strengthen someone else's hands. This is the time of invitation. As we join together and sing, I would like to invite you to pray about how you can strengthen this church, how you can strengthen not the physical church, but the people who are in this church. I would like to invite you to come forward if you have a statement of faith that you would like to make.
Oh